Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. It's really exciting to have this topic and talk about generative AI and the future of work and how it's going to impact our sort of world in the coming months and years ahead. So just a couple of things before we get going. We've got two great panelists and myself talking today. But before we get into that, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you can just keep your microphones off, we'll do most of the talking today. And then we will also be having a Q&A. So there is a questions tab. If you'd like to submit any questions to us, please do that and we'll pick them up towards the end of the session. So without further ado, I'll jump into some introductions. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Blake. I'm the head of technology strategy here at AGS. I've been with AGS a couple of years now, but been in the recruitment technology industry for about 2 decades. I've gone really old school today. I've actually generated my own talking points. I haven't used ChatGPT, so really retro, I think. But that's a bit about me. And I'll hand over to the team to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into the agenda. So, Sailesh.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sailesh here. I'm a practice director at Everest Group, which is a global research and advisory firm. So yeah, I've been tracking the entire talent acquisition services and tech space for a little over 3 years now. And fun fact about me is that I still can't figure out my jacket, so I end up putting my hands in the wrong hole every time. So with that, I'll pass on to Matt.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. My name is Matt Malden. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Globality. We're an AI-based procurement company. I previously ran product at companies like DocuSign and Siebel Systems and others. I also was a developer back in the day at a small database company called Oracle. Great to talk to you today. My fun fact is I decided to surprise my children to take them to Taylor Swift, and they put me on a regiment to learn all the Taylor Swift songs, created a Spotify playlist, and not only did I have to memorize the songs, I had to memorize the chants and got tested, and I passed. Not sure what would happen if I did pass, but there you go.
Congratulations. That sounds like quite a journey, man. Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a lot to get through this morning, obviously, or this evening, and cover off a number of really interesting topics. We're going to touch on some of the history of generative AI and how we've got to the point we've got to, and then we'll get into a deeper dive on some really cool topics around how we will use this technology within talent acquisition and HR. We want to talk a little bit about how enterprises can be successful with the tool, but also the risks and the challenges that we face with generative AI in the world of work. So making sure that we're thinking all about those impacts, and really close to the heart of AGS is the human-centered opportunities with this and the outcomes that we could potentially experience with AI. And then before we get to the Q&A, we'll wrap up with a chance to see some AI in action with the Glow bot, which is part of the Globality application. So thank you, Matt and Sailesh. I'm looking forward to getting into it. Before I hand to you, Matt, just to set the scene a little bit, AI and particularly generative AI is really a super hot topic right now, and I'm sure that's why many of you have joined in this call. Everywhere you look, it's being talked about, and up until now, it's in my view not really been as prevalent or maybe as scary, because it's kind of one of these things that's just over the horizon, being something that has been the domain of developers and very specific software applications, and not something that we've had to deal with sort of on a day-to-day basis. But now ChatGPT, pretty much a year ago, brought this right into focus, and it's made it accessible for everyone. And the speed of this change has really been quite remarkable. And we've gone from what I read the other day, so we've gone from gradually to suddenly in this space, or in the words of Ron Burgundy, that escalated quickly. But AI is already outperforming humans in reading and comprehension and image recognition and language understanding, and that's not new. In fact, it's been doing that for about 10 years, I think. And there's so much talk and speculation about where this is going to lead and what a mixed reality future might look like. And it seems not a day goes by when another app or concept is introduced or uncovered that opens up new ways of imagining how work could look in the months and the years ahead. So today, obviously, we're going to talk about that in detail. But before we get too far ahead of that, Matt, can you help us just to take stock of where we are today and how we've got here, particularly with the growth of generative AI?
Awesome, you bet. Thanks for the intro. And so let's start out talking about, let me get my slides to advance. Let's talk about ChatGPT. Ian said like a year ago, nobody had heard the terminology ChatGPT. What is it? Everybody believed AI was decades into the future. But if you take stock today, everybody's heard of ChatGPT. Everybody's used ChatGPT. I would even go so far as to say most of us have used it this week. It is now part of the DNA and fabric of our society, and it's becoming even a threat to some of the embedded technologies which were monopolistic, like Google and some of the other search engines that we relied on to get answers to any questions. But what you may not know is that ChatGPT, or as a representative of what AI is, can do a lot more than what you may be using ChatGPT for. And as I talk to people, I say, what do you use ChatGPT for? They say, or GPT-3, I have a question, right? It's my alternative to using Google. But you can actually use ChatGPT to do many, many complex things, of which I'm presenting a simple example for you here. So I was going to New York with my family. I was going to be there for 4 days next week when I put this slide together. And what I wanted to do is put together an itinerary. So I asked ChatGPT, hey, help me out. Put together a table that breaks down the top 5 tourist attractions and activities and destinations, and then do some work for me. Figure out what the type of attraction is, how much it's going to cost me for 2 people, give me a description, maybe a rating, how far it is from the hotel I'm staying at. And as you can see, ChatGPT does an excellent job of answering that question. And what you'll see, the difference between AI today, powered by large language models, we'll talk a little bit about that, and AI of the past, is it's not merely a bot doing a standard set of things, but it's an intelligent agent actually adding value to what I need them to do, or it to do. So that's what it does. When we started out on this ChatGPT journey, it escalated fast. Matter of fact, in December of last year, it was just nobody had heard of it, but by January, everybody had heard it. And you take a look at the top 2 graphs on the screen, and you could see how rapidly it grew, both in Google searches and on Reddit. And you see we had more than 1 million users using ChatGPT in just 5 days relative to how long it took Instagram and Spotify. So times are changing fast. There's a lot's going on. And I guess the question I always had was, what happened? What shifted so quickly to taking AI from being a buzzword to reality? And to explain that, you have to take a look at how we got here. It all started in 1950. There's a brilliant data scientist called Alan Turing who grew up out of London. He's known widely as the father of computer science and artificial intelligence. And he developed something called the Turing test, which is the fundamental basis of computers. We started there. We developed the term AI in 1955 to be thought of as something super futuristic, that someday computers would be as intelligent as human beings. Then we saw the first chatbot that was ever released, which was Eliza. Some of you may have used this in the past. It was a psychotherapist that you asked questions to and it answered. It wasn't very sophisticated, but it was the first example of AI. Then we get to the 70s and 80s, and frankly, nothing happened. It was while there was research going on, it was very, very quiet. And then in 1997, IBM invented Deep Blue, which was a chess computer using artificial intelligence that actually competed and beat world champion Garry Kasparov, which was awesome. Then we had a series of bots, Microsoft Tay, we had Amazon Alexa, IBM Watson, Apple Siri, and these all became more and more intelligent, and a lot of you use them every day, particularly Alexa and Siri on your devices, whether it's Amazon or Apple. Then we had AlphaGo, which was similar to Deep Blue to compete in the game of Go. The European Union established some ethic guidelines, but then in 2018 through 2023, you saw 4 evolutions of GPT. And GPT is the basis for ChatGPT and the models that allow it to intelligently communicate. And I'll explain how it works. So this is how we got here. Now, I've used the words AI and LLM. I want to give you some definitions, particularly in generative AI. And what better way to do this, sorry, Ian, is I asked GPT. So define generative AI. Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can create new data based on patterns, right? It can generate text, images, and music, and they're all based on LLMs. And LLMs stand for a large language model. It's basically an advanced AI system that can generate human-like language, right? So this isn't a machine learning model or anything like that. This is basically a huge data set of information with training built on top of it, so that when you throw a prompt at that data set, it can intelligently generate language to respond to that prompt. So that's what we're talking about if you're not familiar. Hopefully we got you baselined. Now, we had various different versions of ChatGPT. There's GPT-1, GPT-3, and now we're on GPT-4. And they're all based on this fundamental language model. But what's interesting is this concept of parameters. Now, a parameter is a weight or a bias. It's a way of taking a look at the data and analyzing the data. And the more parameters or weights or biases in the algorithmic model, the more sophisticated it will be at generating relevant responses. And you can see the hockey stick effect, where GPT-3, which was the one that launched in December of last year, had 175 billion parameters, and GPT-4 has 1 trillion parameters. So the models are very sophisticated, they're very relevant, and they're rapidly improving. And that allows us to do more and more sophisticated things with adequate performance levels. And the way you're going to see this come up in the enterprise is some companies are going to implement a simple feature around auto-completing text, for example. Then other companies are going to develop departmental level applications, like an automated bot to do customer support. And then the final level, where we're all trying to get to, is embed AI as the DNA or the fabric of applications. Now, let me give you some examples, 2 impressive examples from companies you've heard of, and then tell you about what we're doing at Globality. Microsoft has a technology called a Copilot that assists you when you're creating information. And it can do things like generate summaries of documents and rewrite sections and generate graphs, all using text to graphs or text to summaries. Adobe Firefly, you can use text to generate images. So I can say, show me a lighthouse, and put it on a cliff, and show me what it might look at sunset, and put an underwater city behind it. And at Globality, we're using AI to power the sourcing journey so that you can intelligently buy and procure things, and your bot is recommending pricing, it's recommending vendors, it's assisting you along the way and answering questions like the world's greatest, most sophisticated procurement assistant. Now, another example I want to show you is what Autodesk did. And Autodesk was helping to generate a new motorcycle part that was lighter and stronger than all other previous designs. And the way they did it is they fed all the inputs into GPT, into a large language model, and the large language model was able to, using the weights and balances I talked about earlier, develop a new technology that was optimal given the constraints. So that's a little bit of a background on the AI. Let me turn it back over to you, Ian.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. It's really good to sort of get that in context, because the speed with which it's moved seemed pretty dramatic, but it's been around for some time, and I think the consumability is what we're really experiencing now. So let's get into some of the discussion and the debate and the topics that we put up at the front of this webinar. So Sailesh, I'm going to come to you, and based on sort of Matt's sort of history and the kind of things that we're looking at in the general sense, what do you see as the potential for AI and generative AI in particular inside of recruitment and HR?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a fantastic overview by Matt. And if you actually look at the landscape, there's quite a bit of use cases, right, throughout the entire talent acquisition value chain. But if we were to sort of pinpoint the, I would say, most evident areas where the synergies, let's say, are pretty significant, right, or where the exploration can actually start off pretty early on, I would say there are 4 areas, right? One is improving candidate engagement. So if you look at the last 2-3 years, ever since we came out of COVID, every single enterprise leader that we have talked to, they have been trying very hard to build and maintain a very strong employer brand. This has led to significant amount of investments in terms of technology. So every single enterprise is going beyond just the traditional ATS or the traditional sort of HR information systems, and they're investing in new age platforms, right? Like candidate relationship management tools, recruitment marketing tools, job distribution, etc. Now, to have effective engagement, the key is personalization, right? So we are seeing HR teams and talent acquisition teams put a lot of effort into creating I would say hyper personalized campaigns and sort of, let's say, outreach programs that keeps the top talent pools engaged. But to be very honest, as humans, we do have our limitations, right? And that's where generative AI can actually play a significant role, right? So looking at your top of the funnel, looking at your existing talent pools, generative AI tools actually can, I would say, design and create outreach plans and engagement plans that are well tailored and very, very personalized, right? Like say, super hyper personalized to suit all the candidates that you have in your talent pools, right? The second would be deep analytics. So we have moved on, in terms of evolution. We are moving on from reporting and diagnostics. We are heading towards predictive and prescriptive analytics, right? Now, the challenge of predictive and prescriptive analytics is that it requires an immense amount of analysis and computing power to generate insights that, let's say, a manager or a vice president or a CXO needs, right, regarding the talent. Now, if we look at some of the, let's say, current applications with the right integration, we can actually have analytical tools with a generative AI component, which create dashboards and data cuts and views with only a single line of prompt, right? So imagine a future where a senior manager or a leader comes and types, hey, can you tell me what percentage of my workforce is at risk of attrition in the next 6 months, or just tell me what percentage of my employees seem to be engaged. So imagine having the entire information and all the insights just one single line away. The third area would be the assessment and interview process. So we saw a massive uptick in video-based interviews and sort of chatbot integrations in interview situations. And with generative AI and its ability to create human-like interactions, I think digital recruiters and sort of recruiting assistant personas can actually become one of the great use cases that actually make candidates feel that they're talking to someone on the other end, right? Instead of staring into a camera and just being put in a situation where they know that they're talking to a system and not a person at the end of the day, right? And the last and the final use case is sort of the enhancement around job descriptions and talent profiles. In fact, job description creation is one of the areas where we are seeing generative AI being used by recruiters quite a bit to refine languages, to process older job descriptions, to identify gaps, etc. And also, if you look at the amount of information needed to analyze top talent and create ideal talent profiles, generative AI is definitely could be a game changer once we address some of the kinks that are there.
Right. Well, I mean, it's really good to have it broken down like that, because there's clearly a huge range of possible use cases, and it's really what's exciting for me is the ability for us to start thinking about a world where technology doesn't just provide some speed and efficiency, but it actually starts to add additional value to the work that we do, and really brings a greater experience to things, and sort of push the needle even further into what's possible with the vast amounts of information that we've got, and really augments what we can do as people as well. So Matt, just bring you in here a little bit as well. So when we talk about all these use cases and generative AI, there's a lot of questions I've sort of or discussions I've been in recently about, well, how do we make this work? Well, what are the opportunities, or what do we have to be thinking about as a business to get the most out of this AI or be successful with this product?
Thanks, Ian. It's a great question. When we talk about AI today, and even in my examples I gave you, they're all consumer examples, right? They are, how did I go to New York and find the landmarks and how to get things close? But enterprise AI or B2B AI is going to be different from B2C AI. Matter of fact, there's a lot of negative press about AI because employees are typing proprietary data or feeding proprietary data into ChatGPT and say, based on this data set, write me a code or write some program. And so when you get to enterprise AI, it's going to be a little different. The controls are going to be different. The metaphors are going to be different. And I would focus on 3 areas as you take a look at AI solutions. And by the way, it's becoming a mandate in an enterprise to say, in your department, I don't care what your department is, what's your AI strategy? Because as you can see, and Sailesh talked about, you can use it in almost any area to do almost anything. But the first thing is we're going to see an evolution of domain-specific proprietary data. So the data in the LLM is basically the internet. It's all the generic data, and the large language models figures out how to answer questions based on all the data set, and the data set was been revised from 2018 and before to now like 2022 and before, and it's becoming more and more current. But what these AI technologies do not have access to is the data about your specific domain, right? Whether it's pharmaceutical or insurance or communication, you might have data that's proprietary to your business. So the first thing you're going to have to look for is, whatever I'm using, where's it getting that proprietary data that's really powering the intelligence for my industry? The second is the technology needs to be outcome focused, or focus not just on answering simple questions, but generating value for your business. So whether your business is transportation or medical or what have you, you need to define the objectives that the application's going to meet. It's not just a small tool or widget that I can communicate, but how's it going to drive my business forward? And the third and most important thing for enterprise AI is it's not the underlying model and the intelligence that is going to be differentiated, because there are many different AI platforms out there available that enterprise software companies can tap into. The question's going to be is, how is that intelligence embedded to the user experience of the tool so that I understand what it's doing? It's making suggestions versus automation. I have a clear mental model of what it's doing and how it's doing and what it's capable of doing, and how do I instruct it to do what it wants to do. So you're going to see a tremendous push in the user experience of how we manifest AI in these applications.
Yeah, that is really good to think about that way. But one thing that's been sort of on my mind as we've been talking this last 10 minutes or so is we keep mentioning the word data and using that data and analyzing that data. And I think if you're a CISO listening to this, or if you're worried about data and protecting that data, there's obviously going to be some alarm bells ringing. And I think one thing that's probably worth us touching on is some of the risks and challenges of AI in the world, and what we should be thinking about. So Sailesh, do you want to jump in on that and give any thoughts on?
Yeah. So I want to start off by saying that if to the folks attending today, that if you are worried about this entire piece, trust us, you're not alone, right? So we do an annual key issues survey, right? And you should be seeing it come up on your screen soon. So we interview quite a bit of enterprises on, sort of the top 5 challenges that they expect in the coming year, right? So if you look at this year's results, we have 2 new entrants, right, in the top 5. On number 3, we have regulations in key markets as a top concern, and on number 5 we have increased geopolitical location risk, right? And this is, by the way, based on 80 responses from sort of big large enterprises so far, and the study is still going on. But we definitely are sure that the concern around compliance and regulations and the increased geopolitical location risk will continue to stay top amongst all enterprises. And if you look at a few years back, they were not even featuring in the top 10, right? Nothing that, there has been a drastic shift in sort of the perception that a lot of enterprises have. Now, if you look at even all major governments, there is a race going on to roll out some sort of a regulation, right? China has already put in place some temporary regulations recently, and every single, let's say, major economy, be it US, be it France, UK, Germany, everybody is evaluating and making sure to get ahead of the trend and put in some sort of a, let's say, checks and balances in place, which helps set some guidelines and roadmap for AI usage, right? Now, when we talk to enterprise buyers and we see some of the pilots or implementations and we evaluate the technology, there are 4 key areas of concern that come up, right? So one is ethics and bias. So training these systems on extensive data sets, as Matt mentioned earlier, can be problematic if the data sets have some sort of a bias present, right? So if the data sets are not 100%, let's say, to use the word perfect or ideal, then there can be certain biases that can be perpetuated and amplified, right, within these LLMs. The second is the issue around ownership, especially when it comes to creation of data or creation of content, right? So we briefly discussed, let's say, using generative AI to create, let's say, outreach programs or candidate emails and campaigns. But the question is, who owns it, right? So the absence of any relevant IP or copyright laws at the moment has actually created ambiguity around the legal ownership of content, right? And these can lead to situations where multiple parties actually start claiming ownership of generated content, resulting in legal liabilities. The third would be hallucinations and explainability. This is a place which has become source of a lot of memes also on Instagram and Twitter. A lot of people have managed to use insufficient data and actually create faulty reasoning with some of the ChatGPT models, right? So ChatGPT in some cases has produced facts which are incorrect or completely out of context. Now, this occurs due to insufficient data or misunderstanding, and also this exposed the fact or the lack of visibility into the reasoning processes that some of these AI systems are adopting in the background. And the last piece is the big piece that Ian, you briefly touched upon, is data privacy and security. So democratizing this entire process magnifies the avenues for potential information leakage. So we already have enough regulations in place, such as GDPR in Europe, to ensure that personally identifiable information for candidates is very clearly managed. So there is the risk of regulatory fallout from data collection and retention without proper disclosure, right? And organizations also have a risk of breach when they're using some of these data points to fine-tune their generative AI models. So these are the 4 big thoughts that we are hearing about quite a bit, and I think addressing these 4 would be very, very important to talk about or to go ahead with the implementation of the B2B use case that Matt was highlighting earlier.
Yeah, if I could chime in, Sailesh, one of the, I think all those risks are real and important, but I also want to make sure everybody understands that having privacy and security around your data is different in the consumer case and the enterprise case. And a lot of vendors, including Globality, are using LLMs that have security and privacy and regulation around them such that the data you are sending to these LLMs that are being processed is not being used to train the LLM models, which would then be used by other customers. So, while we need to be careful, there are a lot of safeguards in place. And the AI being used by the application is very different from a free-form chat GPT where you could literally paste company secrets in and say, what do you think about that? So I think, while there are some risks, there also is some mitigation. And I think it's important to note because I think the mitigation in the enterprise software space is actually very commendable to the extent that these AI systems for B2B applications are very viable today.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And I think that's really good to keep in mind because it's a new world we're entering into it at a scale like this, but some of the fundamentals of how we keep controls over what technology we bring into our organization still exist. It's just looking at it in slightly more detail in new areas and challenging us in slightly different ways. But certainly it's helpful to keep that in mind. Just moving on to the final topic that we had on here was talking about the impact on the workforce and humans themselves. And AGS is very, very passionate about this element because the human enterprise means a lot to us, and how humans interact and how we work together and how we utilize technology in accordance with what we do every day matters a lot. And we can't shy away from the reality that AI, generative AI, is going to replace some jobs, some entirely, and others to a lesser extent. Or if you listen to Elon Musk a couple of weeks ago, being interviewed by the British Prime Minister, he sort of indicated that every job might be replaced by AI. And I think that might be a little bit of a stretch, but even so, the impact is coming. And whilst that might be a little bit nerve-wracking in one respect, there's plenty of evidence to suggest the kinds of jobs and what percentage might be impacted, etc. AI can also provide an advantage as well, because there's evidence to suggest as well that the workforce is shrinking. And if you look at the demographic data, particularly in developed countries, you see birth rates reducing, and then the workforce of the next 20, 30, 40 years is going to be fundamentally different to what it has been the last 20 to 30, 40 years. So we've got to embrace AI in the sort of process of solving that challenge. So it's going to be a combination of sort of humans and technology, I think. And when it comes to that, so the areas where humans potentially could be replaced I think about the fact that humans are extremely good at reinventing themselves. We're hugely resilient little animals, and I think we if you think about 100 years ago, there were thousands of people employed around the world as lamp lighters, right? Every night going out lighting the lamps, and in the morning turning them off again. Electricity changed all that, and then those people found other work to do and new opportunities to get work done. If you think 30 to 40 years ago, or not even, probably 30 years ago, when the internet was starting to come on, we didn't have roles such as social media managers and search engine optimizers, and those didn't exist. And the internet created a whole lot of new opportunities for people. And I think we'll see the same thing here in the world of work, that AI is going to generate a whole lot of additional roles that need to get done. I think also there's going to be a tremendous impact on education. I think the way that our children learn, even adults, the way that we learn is going to change. It's going to be less about volume of text to digest from books, but more about discernment and asking questions and clarifying and challenging information, which will be tremendously interesting. You saw sort of that, how the advent of the calculator changed the way that mathematics was taught. No longer learning through big pages of logs, and you could use that on the calculator in an instant. So there is those sorts of things that changed. But I think in the next couple of years, and I'd like to get both of your thoughts on this as well, but certainly over the next couple of years, or maybe the next 5 years, for the most of us, our experience of AI is going to be as an assistant to what we do. And Microsoft Copilot's just rolling out in many organizations now, and a great example of that. And it's tools that will help us to become more productive and give us a little bit more time back to think about the hard stuff, think about the discussions we need to have, plan for those important meetings, plan for those interviews, and give us a little bit more time to make better and more higher quality decisions and become a little bit more human in our day-to-day tasks.
Yeah, I definitely agree, right? So as an analyst firm, we the last 6 months we have actually spent time talking to a lot of enterprises who sort of got hyped up with the entire generative AI talk, and their question was, what does this mean for my recruitment team or my HR team, right? And I mean, as Everest Group, we are definitely bullish on the human aspect in the near term, at least. So you're absolutely right, Ian, right? We also feel that ChatGPT, at least from a recruitment perspective, will be a supporter and an optimizer of processes rather than a transformation and a disruption, right? And if you look at some of the things that the various pundits in the market are saying, while there's research that speculates that jobs will get wiped out by 30%, there's also research. I just went through a recent International Labour Organization report, which actually says that generative AI will actually augment jobs rather than destroy them, right? So that's what a lot of us are doing. We're speculating, right? But if we have learned anything from history, when automation came in and there was a lot of backlash and pushback that it will replace jobs, yes, it did replace jobs, but then it has actually created a lot of categories of jobs. And if you look at the current situation of industrial and blue collar roles, even with a lot of automation, we are in a talent crunch, right? We have a dearth of talent in the industrial and the blue collar space. So, yes, like you said, generative AI will definitely take some jobs away, but there's a very, very strong chance that a lot more jobs will get created. And, the existing talent and the incoming talent that we have will actually get freed up to pursue more strategic and productive jobs at the end of the day. Yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to add from my side.
Yeah. Matt, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, what we see in our customer base is we're automating kind of the rote parts of the job, the parts that are not enjoyable, not fun, are very repetitive, not very value added. And we're doing two things. One is we're making them value added because the AI is very, very sophisticated, but we're reallocating employees' times to do stuff which is more interesting, more human, more value added on top of it. And I'll keep it short, Ian, but I agree with your comment that in the early stages, the AI is going to be an assistive technology, not an automated technology, and establishing user experience mental models so users understand what the recommendations are, whether they want to accept them. I mean, you're not going to see a system that's going to generate an essay, turn it into a teacher without the human taking a look at it and making sure that it represents their intent. Over time, maybe it learns your thoughts and biases and interests and values. But today it's going to roll out as more of assistive. And I think at the end of the day, we are resilient, is going to create more jobs, albeit the nature of the jobs is going to change.
Great, thank you. So just to remind everyone, the Q&A is open if you want to list any questions through the chat. I'm going to hand over to Matt, who's going to take us through an experience with Globality and the generative AI tool that they've been building within their application. So Matt.
Awesome. So I just want to show you one example. There are many examples. If you could advance the slide, please. Many examples of how an AI works. And this is, I talked about the 3 levels, kind of the feature, the departmental level, and in weaving AI into the DNA of the application. And when you get to that 3rd level, AI is everywhere. It's doing everything. And this is just an example, and I'll show you a demonstration. What Globality does is it helps companies through the buying process. When they're sourcing goods and services, they have a project, they have to define the project, they have to select vendors, they have to get proposals, evaluate the proposals, and award the business. And you see that in that arrow with the green circles on the top, the various different stages of the life cycle of a project in procurement. When you see in the boxes below is how AI shows up throughout the journey in various different places. Now, we do have a bot you'll see in the application called Glow, who is a procurement assistant. And if you're familiar with bots, she's going to behave and be knowledgeable just like a bot, really turbocharged from generative AI. But you also see there are pieces of AI throughout the entire journey, and I'll highlight some of them, that just show up. And they don't say, hey, I'm AI or I'm a bot, but the application is exponentially more intelligent because of the AI. And so an example would be when you're describing what your problem is, we use a form of AI called NLP, natural language processing, to understand the complex intent of what you're trying to do. And then when you're scoping a brief or a document, you can just drag in all the artifacts or files you've worked on as a project team, and it will then start analyzing that and dynamically creating a brief for you. Or when you're trying to identify vendors, it will take two disparate databases, a database of providers and what they're good at, and attributes of the project that you define, and it will map those two using a type of AI called machine learning. And there's technology to evaluate proposals and to transmit data in and between different applications. And so rather than focus on what globality does, the message I want to convey in this slide is next generation applications will have AI embedded into the DNA of everything they do, and it will be almost seamless in identifying where the AI is because the applications will just be next level. Cool. Let me give you a demonstration and show you my screen real quick. Okay, great. So in the application you see displayed on your screen, this is globality. And globality, just to give you the telemetry of the screen, we have a navigation bar on the left, and we have the content area in the right where all the magic happens. And in the upper left of the content area, you see this blue bubble. And this blue bubble is Glow. Glow is your intelligent procurement assistant, your AI. And you'll see Glow throughout this demonstration because Glow is going to pop up every now and then and tell me things, interact with me, help me along my journey. And the way the journey starts is I click Create New, and I'm going to create a new project. A new project is I need to buy something. It's a sourcing event. When I create a new project, I'm taken to a screen where I can specify what I want to do, which is migrate our CRM system to the cloud. As you can see, Glow's helping me out and interviewing me here. And then I provide a project description. In order to migrate my CRM system to the cloud, I want it to be more scalable, accessible, efficient, and there's a whole description there. So I give a 3 to 5 sentence description, and now this is where you start seeing the AI, which is based on everything I've said, which isn't very much. Glow's trying to determine what type of project this is. Is it RFP, an RFQ, an RFI? You see those here, a sole source project, and Glow saying, hey, this looks like an RFP. So you can see it's making suggestions along the way very, very subtly. So I click RFP, that looks great. And then it says, hey, I need some project scope and details, which I quickly type in. I'm trying to, seeking a service provider that can do this in the United States and the United Kingdom. But then we get to the next step where the AI comes in. When we went out to our customers, they said, hey, Matt, when we start these projects in globality, we're not starting it in globality. We actually have done a ton of pre-work, and when we get to globality, we're ready to source it. So what we want to do is take all these files and artifacts we have that we've been working on, drag them directly into globality, upload them, and we want you to take a look at them and interpret them. And so here you could see an example of one of these files in the demo where it's what I call semi-structured. It's not structured in the way we want it, but it's structured in some sort of format that describes the project. And once I do that, I can click continue. Glow is going to head and using generative AI, it's going to analyze the file and pull information from that file that's going to answer the next series of questions. For example, what type of product or services are you looking for? It clearly identified that it's a cloud migration and there's a data migration involved. That's great. Then we get to the next question. Are there any considerations service providers who are going to bid on this project need to keep in mind? And you'll see here, we can use a past answer, which one of my colleagues used in the past, or Glow can generate, using generative AI, based on those documents and my prior responses, a great answer, which I'm going to do, which is you should prioritize legal and ethical, a lot of the things Sailesh talked about, and you should consider. Then we go to the next question, any conflicts of interest? Again, Glow's suggesting an answer, which looks great. I may even get to a question where Glow doesn't know what to say. And the reason Glow doesn't know what to say is we haven't fed Glow any information, or the generative AI any information about what to put here. And so when we run into a roadblock, I can do something very, very simple, like type in a couple of keywords. I know when it comes to security, I heard about ISO 27001 and GDPR in Europe. And then I can use AI to turn those basic, simple words into a more complex, comprehensive, meaningful requirement that will then go out to vendors. So as you can see, I'm giving you many, many examples of AI helping me out through the entire journey so I can scope the needs. Then we come to this next thing, and AI is recommending what type of questions to put in the RFP for vendors. And as you can see, there's a series of questions. What's your company currently involved in? Certain sections are mandatory based on this project, particularly our standard questions and our cloud security questions. And other questions are recommended but not required. I can go ahead and do that. And now I've generated really an RFP that my providers are going to need to fill out, which the reason this is important because this is the information that I'm going to then analyze to award the business. When I click continue, again, AI is recommending for this project, here's a pricing template that vendors need to use to submit pricing in the right format for the right attributes. And when I complete that, I've actually scoped my entire process with a very compelling brief that we'll send to providers saying what we're trying to accomplish. So that sounds great. I click submit brief, and then AI and Glow is going to do what I talked about earlier, which is going to take all the robust attributes of a project, and then it's going to map it to a robust database of providers. And when it does, I can see AI is considering a lot of factors in determining who to send this project to for bidding. I'll go ahead and invite the providers. And after I invite the providers, imagine time goes by, they're all submitting proposals and I can visualize it here. In this instance, 5 people have submitted proposals and I can do things like visualize when the proposals are going to be delivered. But let's go back to the AI. And in this instance, I can ask Glow, hey, I need some help in comparing the proposals. What do I do? And so I go here and it's actually analyzing the proposals and telling me which ones are good and which ones are bad. And it will actually drive me to a dashboard to allow me to analyze all these proposals and eliminate proposals, view a price breakdown, drill into the detailed data, and even isolate bars so I can compare project management costs. But at this point, I need a little more help because I want a better price. So I go to Glow and I say, how do I get a better price? And Glow says, hey, you should use this feature capability called e-negotiation. When I conduct an e-negotiation, I go out to all the vendors, share with them where they're currently ranking and ask them for a better bid. And here you can see it's got all the vendors, where they rank, the variance to the lowest bids. When I click send, it sends it out, and then some of these providers update their bids. I get 3 new revisions, and I can review all those proposals in a side-by-side comparison and see the project end date, the commercials, the answers to their questions. I can view one specific proposal and show how we rated it. And then lastly, I can award the business. And when I award the business, the last phase of AI, I can see a statement of work template that AI is automatically generating for me based on the content of the application. I can then download it, modify it, and then the final stage is I can send it downstream to a back-end system like Ariba as a purchase requisition. So there is a lot to digest, but what I want to show you, or what I want to emphasize, is that AI was throughout the entire journey. Two is AI was very, very assistive, but it enabled me to be very complete and efficient in what I do. And the last thing was the user experience of how the AI embedded into the journey was as important as the intelligence itself. Cool, Ian?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Matt. It's really awesome to see the real work, like in context, working like activity that we can benefit from the use of AI, which is tremendous. And I think the work that you've done on that is really amazing. And I think that's where we are today. I can only imagine where we are in 9 months, 18 months, 36 months from now. I feel like we're talking in increments, not in decades, like technology potentially was talked about increments of months rather than decades. That's what I mean to say. So, but yeah, that was really useful and insightful. So thank you for talking us through that. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if there's any questions that have come through on the questions tab. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to use the time to sort of check on any questions. So just one that's just come through, just in around the just the impact of the question is, what is the impact of AI on workforce trends? I think we've covered some of that in the discussion already, say around sort of our experience of it potentially around it being as an assistant or a co-pilot. But I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Sailesh or Matt, on what we might see.
I mean, in terms of workforce impact, we are starting to see, I think, a big impact on the media industry recently, right? So a lot of content generation is actually, happening through a lot of generative AI tools. And if you look at some of the smaller media houses, sort of, let's say the internet first, first media houses, they're actually putting out articles and publications with a disclaimer that this entire thing is AI generated, right? So a bit of impact there. We are also seeing a lot of I would say policies being put in place by organizations on how existing employees can interact with any sort of a generative AI tool, right? So what are some of the guidelines or the best practices they should follow and they should avoid, right? But apart from that, yeah, we are largely seeing, at least from our perspective, we are seeing a lot of evaluation and a lot of piloting, right? People have great ideas, enterprises, leaders, even service providers, everybody is filled with ideas, and a lot of those ideas are in the pilot stage, right? So probably in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll start seeing some of those executions come to fruition, right? But yeah, that's sort of my 2 cents on how we are seeing impact on the workforce.
Thanks, Sailesh. Any last thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, our customers are pretty demanding, and when you think about who's coming to us, they're pretty innovative, leading companies who want to adopt AI, and they're in the situation where they have to do more for less, right? Due to the economic climate, they're being forced to cost cut or not expand as their demand is expanding for their products and services. And so what's been really, really interesting is as we roll out this technology, first of all, we solve a problem. We make them be more efficient, more productive with less people and less effort, by obviously leveraging technology. But I think the thing that's even more fascinating is, and I blame GPT in a joking way about this, is the expectation of what AI can do is limitless in the minds of our users. And so, they're like, why doesn't it do this? And could it consider this? And we have, and by the way, they're right. Could it consider global and macroeconomic trends and labor rates in these different markets? And so I think we're right. Look, it's exciting. We are right on the tip of the iceberg, but it's amazing to me how we went from 0 to 60 in a nanosecond. And Ian, I would tell you, you talk about, what you say, decades to months. It changes every day, every day.
That's very fair. That's very fair. I think you probably touched on some of the answers to the next question we got through here, which is around how and which organizations do we see are successfully implementing generative AI. Any companies you've come across that have had success here?
I would say, the thing that's been amazing is we haven't seen any industry trend, but they're clearly early adopters and people who are willing to take the risks. And for us, it's been some huge brand name companies, Fortune 2000 companies, leaders in their market segments. I'm not going to name any of the particular ones, but it really drives from a management buy-in to adopt AI into the enterprise. There is plenty of reason for inertia not to do anything, but innovative leaders are doing this stuff. And what's interesting to me is usually the innovative leaders have been kind of, specialists in functional areas like a sales leader or a service leader or a technology leader. But for what we're selling, probably the most innovative role is the CFO. The CFO who has to say, hey, we have objectives about running our enterprise more efficiently from a financial perspective, and we need to leverage these tools. But I would say today, so far, early innovators, but it's getting to be, we talked about days versus months versus decades. It's getting to come down to the early adopters in the main street pretty quickly. At least that's what I'm seeing.
That's great. I know there's another question that's just come through, but we are up on time, so I'm gonna have to call us to a close here, unfortunately. But I just want to thank everyone that's on the line for attending. Matt, Sailesh, thank you for participating in our chat today. It's been awesome to sort of pick your brains and sort of get your insight on this amazing topic. And I hope that everyone's been listening and has taken away some really useful information and inspiration around what AI and how it's going to change the way we do things in the future and help you on your journey to AI adoption and towards the future of work. So thank you again from us. For more information, if you want to find out get in contact with us, you can do that via our website, allegis.com. But I appreciate the time and thank you, and hopefully see you all soon.